Most parents who look like they have it together don't. Not in the way it looks from the outside. What's actually happening beneath that is something almost no one says out loud. And that's silence. Not the anxiety itself, but the silence around it is doing something specific to you. This video is going to say the thing. Not a version of it. Not softened down until it's safe for everyone. The actual thing that most parenting content never quite reaches, because there is a specific experience of parenting that has almost no public description. It doesn't have a name that gets used in conversation. It doesn't show up in the posts. And because it has no name and no visible community, it ends up feeling like a private deficiency. Like something that is happening to you specifically. It isn't. Let me show you what I mean. Here is what a typical morning looks like from the outside. Parents arriving. Children transitioning, everyone moving. Some parents look tired. Most look like they're managing. A few look like they genuinely have it handled. Now here is what is often happening on the inside of those same people. A low current of something that doesn't have a comfortable name. A background hum of, am I doing this right? Did I handle that wrong? Is this gonna matter later? A second track running underneath the surface conversation. Monitoring, cataloging, second-guessing. That second track, that is the thing no one talks about. Not because it's rare. Because there is no socially acceptable way to mention it at school pickup. Here's why. There is an unspoken contract in most parenting social environments. The contract says, we show up as competent. We share the struggles that are manageable enough to be relatable without being alarming. We do not say out loud to another parent we see regularly that something underneath us feels like it's not quite holding. That contract is not malicious. It is protective. No one decided to enforce it. It formed the way most social contracts form. Organically, quietly, through 1,000 small signals about what is and isn't okay to surface. And most parents follow it without ever deciding to. They show up. They perform the version of themselves that fits. They get home, put the children to bed, and then, in the quiet, feel the gap between what they showed and what they actually carried all day. That gap is not a personal failure. It is the entirely predictable result of a social architecture that has no space for this conversation. So what does this silence actually do? Here is the problem with that silence. It doesn't just leave the experience unnamed. It actively distorts it. Because without accurate information about what other parents are carrying, the mind fills the gap with what it can observe. And what it can observe is the performance, the competent arrivals, the managed transitions, the social ease. And it compares, not consciously, not as a deliberate act of self-judgment, but underneath, the comparison runs constantly. They seem fine. Why doesn't this feel fine? They're managing. What is wrong with me? Research on social comparison consistently shows that people in high-stakes, identity-central roles and parenting is as high-stakes and identity-central as it gets. Default to upward comparison when accurate information isn't available. Which means the silence doesn't leave people neutral. It leaves them measuring themselves against the most competent-looking version of everyone around them, against a fiction. And here is what that does over time. The anxiety doesn't stay at the level it started. It picks up a second layer. The first layer is, I am anxious about my parenting. The second layer is, I must be the only one who feels this way, which means something is specifically wrong with me. That second layer, the isolation layer, is often heavier than the first. It is also entirely constructed, built from silence and comparison and the absence of anyone saying the actual thing. Most parenting content doesn't help with this. In fact, and this is worth sitting with, it can make it worse, because most parenting content is also performing competence. Here is the framework. Here is the approach. Here is what to do. Which is useful information wrapped inside an implicit message. Someone has figured this out, and if you haven't yet, keep working. What this video is for is something different. Not a framework. A mirror. There is something underneath parenting anxiety that almost no one names. Not as the cause of it, but as the thing it is actually made of. The parents who carry the most consistent parenting anxiety, the ones with the loudest second track, the most active monitoring, the heaviest 3 a.m. inventory, are, in a specific and measurable way, the most attuned. That is not a consolation. It is a description of a mechanism. Attunement. The capacity to track your child's emotional state, to notice the subtle signals, To care about the impact of each interaction is not a neutral skill set. It comes with a cost. The same sensitivity that makes someone an attuned parent makes them exquisitely aware of every moment they fall short of what they want to give. Research on parental sensitivity and anxiety confirms what many parents already feel in their bodies. The anxiety is not separate from the care, it runs on the same circuitry. The parents who feel the least anxiety are often the ones tracking the least. The ones who feel it most acutely are often the ones paying the closest attention. This does not mean the anxiety is useful exactly as it is. It doesn't mean it should stay at this volume, or that nothing can shift, but it means something important about what it is. It is not a sign that something is broken in you. It is a sign that something is working. The part that cares, the part that tracks, the part that takes this seriously, that part is functioning. It has just never had an accurate mirror held up to it, one that shows it for what it actually is, rather than reflecting it back as evidence of inadequacy. The parents around you, the ones who seem to be managing, many of them are running the same second track, carrying the same 3 a.m. inventory, measuring themselves against the same fiction you've been measuring yourself against. They just haven't heard anyone say it out loud either. The performance exists because the social architecture has no room for the truth. Not because the truth is shameful, because it requires someone to say it first. This is what that looks like. You are not uniquely broken. You are not the only one carrying this. You are, in fact, carrying it in exactly the way someone who cares this much would carry it. That is the thing no one says out loud. Not because it isn't true, because no one has said it first. If what just happened here, the specific feeling of being described accurately for the first time, is something you want access to consistently, not occasionally, there is a space built exactly for that. A community of parents carrying the same thing with the same voice that just named it. The link is in the description. It's called What It Is, a place where this conversation happens regularly. Now, let me be clear about something. Understanding this doesn't make the anxiety disappear tonight. That is worth saying clearly, because this audience has heard enough promises that didn't hold. The second track will still run. The 3 a.m. inventory will still come, but something specific changes when the anxiety has an accurate name and an accurate community. The isolation layer starts to lift. Not all at once, not dramatically, but the second layer, the one that says I must be uniquely deficient, loses its grip when the evidence against it becomes real. When it stops being a concept you've accepted intellectually and becomes something you've actually experienced. Someone described exactly what you carry, and they weren't describing a failure. They were describing a parent who is paying attention. That is what is available to you tonight. Not a transformation, not a system. One thing to put down, the part of this that says the anxiety is evidence against you. It is not. It is evidence of exactly the kind of attention your child is growing up inside. Here is what that means practically. The next time the second track runs, the next time the 3 a.m. inventory starts, there is a different question available than the one that's been running. Not, what does this mean about me? But, what am I actually tracking here? Because the anxiety is information. Not always accurate information, not always proportionate, but information from a system that is working. A system that cares enough to keep watching, to keep checking, to take this seriously even when it costs something. The parents who never feel this are not the benchmark. They are not evidence of what parenting is supposed to feel like. They are evidence of something else. A different level of tracking, a different emotional architecture. And that architecture is not the goal. The goal, the one worth moving toward, is not the absence of anxiety. It is the ability to hear what the anxiety is actually saying without letting it rewrite what you are. If this opens something you want to go further with, a space where this conversation is ongoing, not occasional, the link in the description will take you there. What is the one thing you carry about your parenting that you have never said out loud to anyone? Drop it in the comments. This is the place where it can be said. There is something you came into this video carrying. A weight that has had no accurate name and no visible community. A private experience that the social architecture of parenting has made structurally impossible to surface. You are leaving with something different. Not a solution, not a system, something more durable than either of those. A name. And the specific verifiable knowledge that the room you thought you were alone in is full of people carrying the same weight in the same silence. The parents around you are not evidence of what you're failing to be. They are people in the same architecture, following the same unspoken contract, measuring themselves against the same fiction you've been measuring yourself against. That is not small information. That changes the shape of the question. Not, what is wrong with me? But, what has this been costing all of us? The anxiety you carry is not a verdict. It is a signal from a system that is paying close attention. Closer attention than you have ever been given credit for. The parent who lies awake running the inventory is not the parent who is failing. They are the parent who cares enough to keep looking. That is not the same thing as a deficiency. That is, in the most precise sense of the word, love. Not perfect, not healed, but present. Watching. Refusing to stop paying attention. That parent is you. That has always been you. And now, for the first time, that has a name.